The man pins the girl down. He brushes her hair aside. He saw the crack on the girl's back.
You're practically human.
Then, he inserts his finger into the small hole at the back of the girl's neck. The girl loses her temper. And this small hole is the girl's weakness. It is also a symbol of her race being enslaved by humans. In the future world, the once prosperous Earth has now become desolate. A global ecological crisis has erupted. Mutated plants have invaded all parts of the world. Seeds cannot reproduce normally. In this apocalyptic world, everyone is in danger. The rich have built a sanctuary, and their lives remain unaffected. But the poor can only seek a way to survive. Amidst the dangers, Helen is one of the poor. One day, she takes her robot with her to search for food in the swamp. Soon, she discovered a mutated sweet potato. She puts the sweet potato into her bag. At this moment, a mutated caterpillar crawls onto her hand. Helen places it into a glass jar. She has collected enough for breakfast. Helen returns home with her robot. As she passes by the mutated plants in front of her door, Helen skillfully avoids the obstacles. This is the security system she has set up. Then, Helen returns home and starts cooking breakfast. She mixes the high-protein ingredients with the sweet potato to make a juice. Next, Helen pours the juice into a bag. The taste of breakfast is indescribable. Even so, she is reluctant to eat it because she has a sick father. Her father has survived until now, solely on an old breathing machine. Fortunately, his consciousness can control the robot to communicate with Helen. She takes the robot into an abandoned warehouse. The warehouse is very dim, filled with mutated plants. They pass through the corridor and enter a room. Helen sees her mother, who has turned into a dried corpse. Helen shows her discoveries to her mother. Then, she begins her own experiment. Helen hopes to grow normal plants. If she succeeds, Helen might gain access to the castle. The castle has advanced experimental facilities, which is the place she longs for. At this moment, Helen focuses on studying the caterpillar. Suddenly, a strange noise comes from outside. She goes out to check the situation. Fortunately, it is just a worshipper. It is said that they lack reason and only know how to pick up scraps and worship gods. Helen watches for a while and remembers that it's time to go home to make lunch. But when Helen arrives at the door, she found that all the mutated plants have died. She quickly grabs a knife and goes inside to investigate. Once inside, Helen finds the room in disarray. She can't understand how they could be robbed despite being so poor. Suddenly, Helen remembers that there is a life-saving generator at home. She rushes to the warehouse to check. Helen sees that the generator's fuel has spilled on the ground. She checks on her father and finds that the breathing machine has stopped functioning due to a lack of power. If she can't find fuel, her father won't survive much longer. However, one bad thing after another occurs, and the robot also stops functioning due to a depleted battery. Now, she can't communicate with her father. Helen can't ask her uncle for help, but he is not a good person at all. He has adopted many orphans, because the rich in the castle like to collect human blood. He uses the blood to trade for seeds, and he is very cold-hearted even toward family. Helen tells her uncle that she wants to trade blood for some fuel. Her uncle agreed. While drawing blood, he tries to persuade Helen to join them, but Helen is no fool. She directly rejects him. Soon, her uncle gets a bag of blood, but he throws Helen out. She thinks of her father at home. Helen decides to sneak back into the warehouse to retrieve what she deserves. Fortunately, everything goes smoothly. Just as she is about to leave, she is drawn to a room. The room is illuminated by pink lights. Curious, Helen goes in to see what treasures there are. Helen discovered that the room contains non-mutated seeds. These good things are something Helen must take more of. Then, she runs home with her findings. Suddenly, a flying vehicle passes overhead, but her father at home is still waiting for help. Helen chooses to ignore it and heads straight back home. The generator starts running after adding fuel. The robot also resumes operation. Her father asks her where the things came from. Helen replied that she stole them from her uncle. After hearing this, her father scolds her, saying they can't afford to mess with someone like her uncle. But Helen believed she did it to save her father. Her father actually blames her. Then, Helen storms out of the house in anger. She runs into the woods and discovers a woman. The woman is lying on the ground, parasitized by mutated plants. They are draining the woman's blood. Helen pulls the mutated plants off the woman's body. Then, she takes the woman home to treat her. Helen extracts the plant that has burrowed into the woman's wound. Then, she applies a healing ointment to the woman's wound. This ointment is made from mutated fungi. The ointment can heal various injuries. After settling the woman, Helen runs to adjust the generator. Her father asks her why she brought back such trouble. Helen stated that she cannot stand by and watch someone die. At this moment, the woman wakes up. She looks around at the unfamiliar place. The woman scans her surroundings, seemingly searching for something. Helen hears the sounds and approaches the woman. The woman asks her if she has seen a man. The man is her father. The woman tries to get out of bed, but she cannot stand up due to her leg injury. Helen reassures her to rest and says she will help look for him. Then, following the direction pointed out by the woman, Helen and the robot go to search. They find the wrecked flying vehicle. They prepare to check if there is anyone inside. In the next moment,
To find pilgrims.
facing the non-threatening Helen, her uncle dismisses her. At this moment, the child her uncle brought opens the flying vehicle. Inside the vehicle is an old man. He is the woman's father. Her uncle known that the old man came from the castle. He remembered that the TV at home cannot show anything. He approaches to ask him,
What do you do with my children's blood?
but the old man stated that he doesn't watch TV at all. Her uncle becomes very angry and wants to kill the old man. Helen quickly tries to stop him, but she is too weak. After her uncle kills the old man, he finds a woman's scarf nearby. He realized that there is still another person in the vehicle. He asks Helen if she has seen anyone else. Helen replied that she has just arrived here too. Back at home, the woman asks if Helen found her father, but Helen cannot bring herself to tell her that the old man is dead. She lies and says she found nothing at all. At this point, the woman can walk normally. Helen is very happy. She removed the healing ointment and discovered that her skin has returned to normal. Helen recalls what her uncle said about the woman coming from the castle. Helen takes her to the cultivation base. Inside the base are various mutated plants, which are the materials for making ointments. Helen introduces the plants to the woman. Seeing the beautiful plants in front of her, the woman finally smiled. She tells Helen that her name is Bessa, and her father is an expert in biochemistry. Hearing this, Helen is reminded of her own father. Helen quickly changes the subject, and hopes that one day, Bessa can introduce her to the castle. After returning home, Bessa begins to talk about things in the castle. Helen listens to the interesting stories, and yearns even more to enter the castle. The two chat all night, and their relationship grows closer. The next day, Helen decided that she will sneak into her uncle's warehouse to steal seeds for research. Helen sends the robot to scout ahead, but after waiting a long time, it does not return. Helen has no choice but to go check what happened, but before she can enter, she is called to stop. It turned out that her uncle has caught the robot. He known that Helen has snuck in. Then, her uncle asks Helen why she entered his warehouse. Helen replied that after he drew her blood, he denied her claim, and she is just taking what she deserves. She is just taking what she deserves. After hearing this, her uncle doesn't argue with her. He smashes the robot's interior, but Helen cannot overpower him. She can only take advantage of the moment when her uncle is distracted to escape with the robot. Her uncle sends the orphans to teach her a lesson. Soon, the children catch up with Helen. Then, they brand Helen's hand with a mark. This signifies that she is the property of her uncle. Helen is very angry, but she feels powerless. Helen can only return home to repair the robot. This is the only thing she can use to communicate with her father, but her uncle has destroyed the robot, and Helen cannot fix it. Bessa comforts her. Helen does not want to hide anything from Bessa. She tells her that her father is dead. Then, under Helen's guidance, Bessa sees her father's corpse. The corpse is floating in the water. Bessa gazes at her deceased father, crying out in pain. The dead cannot be brought back to life. Helen pulls Bessa up to the shore. Just as she is about to comfort Bessa, Helen glances over inadvertently. She sees a wound on the back of Bessa's neck. Helen slowly reaches out her hand. The wound extends tiny tendrils. They cling to her like mutated plants. Seeing that Helen has noticed her anomaly, Bessa tells the truth. Bessa tells Helen that she is a mutant. Her father created her, but the castle does not allow mutants to exist, so they have been fugitives. The subsequent events happened because the flying vehicle malfunctioned. Helen finally understood that Bessa cannot help her enter the castle. Helen is also likely to be implicated. Her behavior belongs to sheltering criminals. She shouts for Bessa to leave. After returning home, she locks Bessa outside. Then, Helen repaired the robot. At this moment, her father told Helen that she should not blame Bessa. Mutants also have no choice in their lives. Meanwhile, Bessa learns of her father's death. There is nothing to support her will to live. She prepares to use a knife to destroy her mutation interface, but there are no eyes on the back of her head, and she cuts in the wrong place. Bessa lets out a scream. Helen hears the sound and comes out to stop Bessa, but Bessa said she has had enough of living. Helen quickly comforts her and applies the healing ointment. Then, Helen asks if she can take some of her cells, because the research value of mutants is very high. But after taking some samples, Helen found that the genes are encrypted, but Bessa does not know the reason either. At this moment, she misses her father very much. Bessa picks up a violin and starts to play a tune. In the next moment, Helen discovered that the encrypted genes have been decrypted. She gets up and takes out a seed. Then, Helen drips the seed's genes onto Bessa's genes. A miraculous scene occurs as the two genes perfectly merge. Helen is very happy. Perhaps she has found a way to cultivate seeds. As long as this method works, the poor will have a source of food. Bessa also finds meaning in her existence. Helen plans to go to the warehouse to get some culture medium for her research. If nothing goes wrong, an unexpected event is about to occur. Soon after, her uncle unexpectedly shows up at the door. Seeing Bessa, he does not immediately take her away. Instead, he starts talking to Bessa. Bessa does not understand the ugliness of human nature. She said everything out. Her uncle learned the details and slowly approached Helen. Then, he threatens Bessa with the life of Helen's father. Bessa has no choice and says she is willing to go with him. Helen rushes back to confront her uncle. Helen and Bessa together subdue her uncle, but Helen does not want to kill her uncle. She revealed her discovery. Helen stated that if her uncle provides seeds, they will all have food. But how could a bad person ever change? Her uncle returns home and directly reports Helen. Meanwhile, Helen is still conducting her seed experiment. She has actually succeeded. Helen is immersed in joy and does not notice the strange occurrences outside. Before they realize it, yellow liquid invades the entire house. Moreover, anything that comes into contact with the liquid begins to evaporate. Faced with the change, the two realize they are here to deal with Bessa. This liquid is just a test. Someone will definitely come to capture Bessa soon. They must escape. Helen walks to her father's bedside, wanting to take him with her. However, her father told Helen to leave him behind, because he does not want to live in suffering. He urges Helen to run away with Bessa. Helen agreed. Soon, the captors arrive at her uncle's house. Her uncle thinks these people are there to deliver a bounty, but they do not say a word, and shoot him dead. Karma will come sooner or later. Immediately after, the captors find Helen's home, but the two have already escaped. They search and discover that there is only a patient in the house. Her father tries to control the robot to communicate with them, but the captors launch an attack. The house is blown to ruins. Seeing this scene, Helen breaks down instantly. Fortunately, Bessa holds her tightly. Meanwhile, the captors approach from behind, and they have to escape quickly. Helen is familiar with this place, and leads the captors into a patch of grass. The captors pay no attention, and walk right in. Another captor arrives, and flips over his teammate's corpse. He witnesses the power of the insects. He carefully makes his way through the grass. They play a game of hide and seek with him, but this captor is difficult to shake off. They have no way to take the initiative. Helen manages to get the captor's weapon, but she realized she doesn't know how to use it. Feeling helpless, Helen throws the gun into the grass. The stink bug, startled, kills the captor. At this moment, the two can rest for a while, but Bessa insists on separating from Helen, because they are after her. She cannot drag others down with her. Helen pleads not to be left behind, but Bessa still knocks her out and leaves. Soon, a captor finds Bessa. This time, Bessa willingly follows him. The next morning, Helen wakes up looking bewildered. She realized that Bessa must have left a long time ago. She returned to the destroyed home. Helen took out the seeds from her bag. She plants the two seeds in the soil. To her, these two seeds are like her parents. They carry Helen's memories. At this moment, a noise comes from nearby. It turns out to be the orphans from her uncle's house. Now they have no support, and choose to live with Helen. Helen plans to take them to find a place to live. On the way, they see a worshipper. She is curious about where they took the rags. Following the worshipper, they can find the answer. After a day and night of travel, they reach the end of the worshipper's journey. It turned out that they have piled the rags into a sacred tower. Helen climbs up and, upon reaching the top, looks at the desolate land. Helen scatters the seeds to the wind. The film ends here. This film belongs to the Cthulhu style, but its plot is relatively simple. From beginning to end, it feels like a glass of plain water. Perhaps it is meant to highlight the gloom and oppression in a post-apocalyptic world. In such a dangerous environment, people become very cold-blooded. Her uncle is such an existence. It was thought that his death would be the beginning of hope, but instead, it led to another abyss. The protagonist is originally a symbol of hope, but she has encountered too much misfortune. In the end, she likely becomes numb as well. No one knows if the seeds can truly save the world. As a poor person, her strength alone is simply too small. After all, there is always an unbridgeable gap between the poor and the rich. If you like my channel, please subscribe to it. Your support is my greatest encouragement.